They said the room was empty, but the notebook on the bedside table told a different story. The cover was cheap, lined paper. Inside, nothing special, until the first page revealed neat, deliberate handwriting. 7:14 p.m. Guest entered. Shoes off in 3 minutes. Shower running at 7:22. Lights out by 11:47. The words didn't just describe actions. They described habits. The way someone lived behind a locked door, unaware of being watched. Every page was the same. Dates, times, notes about how long it took someone to fall asleep, how many minutes the television stayed on, what food was delivered, even which shows were chosen on the hotel remote. At first, the staff thought it was nothing more than a guest's obsessive journal. But one detail made that theory collapse. The handwriting never changed. Same pen, same pressure, same careful rhythm. Yet the entry spanned months, describing dozens of different guests who had stayed in the same room. Each name carefully underlined, each stay chronicled down to the smallest detail. Bathroom breaks, showers, how many times they tossed in bed before sleep. The maid who found it felt something cold crawl under her skin, because she knew the room. She had cleaned it for years. She knew the locks, the windows, the corners, and there was no place, absolutely none, from which anyone could have sat and observed all this. Still, the evidence lay in front of her, page after page, covering nearly half the notebook, a surveillance record disguised as personal notes. She carried it to her manager, expecting him to laugh it off, but he didn't. His face stiffened as he flipped through the pages, lingering on one particular entry that made him swallow hard. The note wasn't about a guest. It was about him. Manager enters room 237 at 2:11 p.m. Lingers by window. Adjusts tie and mirror. Exits 2:27 p.m. The maid froze when she saw his reaction. The words had turned him pale. The worst part? She recognized the date at the top of that page because she remembered him being there that day. She had passed him in the hall. And if that was true, then all of it was. The notebook should have been handed to the police. That was the obvious move, but it didn't happen. The manager slid it into a desk drawer, locked it, and told the maid to forget she'd seen it. He even tried to smile, as if it were nothing more than a prank left behind by some guest with too much time on their hands. But the maid couldn't forget. She had touched the pages, felt the indentation of the pen, seen the way the ink bled a little at the corners of each word. It wasn't fiction, it was observation, too sharp, too precise to dismiss. The hotel went on as usual. Guests checked in and out, dragging suitcases that clicked against the lobby's tile. The same breakfast trays rolled through the hallways in the mornings, the same polite small talk at the front desk. But room 237 started to feel different. It was no longer just a number. It was a trap, a stage, a place where every motion left an invisible echo in someone else's hand. One evening, weeks after the notebook was forgotten, the maid returned to clean 237. It had been empty for 2 days, yet when she unlocked the door and stepped inside, the smell of cologne drifted faintly through the air, not the industrial freshener the hotel used, but something sharp, unfamiliar. She froze at the threshold. Someone had been here recently. The bedspread was smooth, untouched. The glasses in the bathroom shined in their plastic sleeves. Nothing was out of place, except the desk. On it lay another notebook. identical to the first. Her hand shook as she opened it. The first line hit her stomach like a weight. Maid enters at 3:06 p.m. Pauses at doorway. Breathing quickens. Reads notebook. Her breath caught. She flipped the page. The notes continued, not about some random guest, but about her. Hands trembling at 3:07. Eyes scanning quickly. She checks the bathroom at 3:09. The ink was fresh, damp enough that a smear streaked across her fingertip. Whoever had written this had been here minutes ago. The maid dropped the notebook, her pulse pounding in her ears. She didn't search the room. She didn't dare. She just pulled the door shut and walked down the hall, keeping her steps steady because she suddenly felt watched, like a camera lens had locked onto the back of her neck. That night she barely slept. She told herself it was impossible, that maybe the manager had planted it to scare her, to keep her quiet. But deep down she knew the truth. Someone else was here, watching, recording, following the rhythm of her life with surgical detail. By morning she decided to speak up again. She went to the manager's office before her shift started, determined to demand answers. But the desk drawer where he had locked the first notebook was open, empty. The manager wasn't at work that day, and when she asked around, no one had seen him leave. His car was still in the lot, dust gathering on the windshield. The police came 2 days later. The manager's family had reported him missing after he failed to come home. His car was still in the lot, untouched. His office looked normal at first glance, until the detectives pulled open the filing cabinet and found the notebooks. Dozens of them. Not one or two, dozens. Identical covers, identical pages filled with meticulous writing. Names, dates, details about guests, staff, delivery workers, even police officers who had once stayed the night during a local investigation. Every person who had passed through the hotel, their habits laid bare in clinical observation. Some volumes went back years. The detectives didn't say much. They bagged the notebooks, warned the staff not to talk, and set up tape across the manager's office. But rumors spread anyway. Housekeepers whispered in hallways, receptionists traded theories in the break room. Some said the manager had been writing all of it himself. Others swore there must have been someone else, someone he was covering for. The maid knew better. She had seen the fresh ink. She had felt it wet against her skin, and she remembered the cologne, sharp and lingering in the empty room. Whoever was watching hadn't stopped. That night she drove home, trying to convince herself it was over, that the police had everything. But when she unlocked her apartment door, the air smelled faintly of that same cologne. Her living room looked untouched. Nothing broken, nothing stolen. But on the small table by her couch sat another notebook. She didn't want to touch it. She didn't want to open it. But her hands moved on their own, drawn by dread. The first line froze her blood. Maid leaves hotel at 7:14 p.m. Stops for gas. Drives home. Unlocks door at 7:53. Pauses in living room. Finds notebook. The page was still wet. Her eyes jumped to the next line, but her vision blurred. She slammed the cover shut and stumbled back, heart hammering. She checked the corners of the room, the windows, the locks. Nothing seemed out of place. No one was there. And yet the words kept replaying in her head, perfectly aligned with her movements, her choices, her fear. Whoever was writing knew her better than she knew herself. That night she didn't sleep. The notebook lay on the table, silent but heavy. like it was waiting for her next move. By morning, she understood the truth. It wasn't just about the hotel anymore. She wasn't a witness, she was a subject. And somewhere, right now, someone was already writing the next line. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the plate number. Not because I memorized it on purpose, but because it burned into my head 7 characters I'd already seen once today, painted on a different car entirely. At first I told myself I was just tired. Long days at work, late drives home, headlights blurring into a stream of sameness. But there it was, the exact same sequence of letters and numbers stamped onto the back of a gray sedan that had been tailing me for 2 blocks. Earlier that afternoon, I'd parked across from a grocery store and watched a dark SUV idled by the curb. I remember glancing at the plate, a habit I'd picked up years ago after a friend of mine had been in a hit and run. That plate stuck with me the way certain phone numbers do. And now, hours later, it was right in front of me again, except on the wrong vehicle. The gray sedan wasn't aggressive. It didn't ride my bumper or flash its lights. It just followed. 2 turns, 3, and it was still there. I slowed down near a green light, pretending to check something on my phone, hoping it would pass me. It didn't. The car kept a steady distance, like it had measured the exact length of space between us. By the time I pulled into my apartment lot, my nerves were prickling. I sat there for a second with the engine running, watching the reflection in my side mirror. The sedan coasted down the street, brake lights glowing, then disappeared around the corner. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But the next morning, on my drive to work, I saw the same plate again. This time on a pickup truck. That was the moment something inside me tightened, a coil of dread pulling itself taut. Plates don't just repeat. Not in the same city, not on different makes, not on different colors. It wasn't just strange, it was impossible. And yet, there it was. That second sighting didn't let me rest. All day at work, the numbers looped in my head like a broken recording. The same plate, 2 different cars, 1 day apart. I started testing myself just to be sure I wasn't losing it. I wrote the sequence down on a scrap of paper, folded it into my pocket. I checked it again during lunch, the same numbers I remembered. No mistake. When I left the office that evening, I scanned every car in the lot before I got into mine. I didn't expect to see it again so soon, but there it was, same plate. This time on a white hatchback. The air felt thin around me, like oxygen had been quietly drained away. I just stood there staring at it, gripping my keys too hard. Cars have different plates. That's how it works. There isn't a chance, not even a microscopic one, that 3 completely unrelated vehicles could share the exact same sequence, unless someone wanted me to see it. I drove home like I was moving through thick syrup, every glance at the mirrors making my stomach knot. The hatchback didn't follow me, not that I noticed. It just sat there in the lot until I pulled out. But even without being chased, I felt cornered. At night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake, listening to the refrigerator hum, the distant thud of someone's footsteps above me, the occasional car outside. Each sound seemed amplified, invasive, like the world was leaning too close. Every time I shut my eyes, the plate appeared behind my eyelids, stamped in white on a black field, repeating endlessly. By morning, I was convinced I needed to do something, so I started checking. I walked through my neighborhood before work, scanning parked cars. Maybe I'd prove to myself it was nothing. Maybe I'd find no match and finally breathe again. But on the second block I froze. There it was, fourth time. Same plate, now on an old rusted station wagon. I snapped a photo with my phone, hands shaking. When I got to work, I compared it to the picture I'd taken the night before of the hatchback. Identical. Same numbers, same arrangement, clear as day. And then a thought struck me that made my skin crawl. What if it wasn't just coincidence or some clerical mistake? What if it was deliberate, a signal, a marker, something directed only at me? For the next 2 days I documented everything. Each time I spotted it, I took a picture. By the end of the week, I had 6 photos, 6 different cars, all with the same plate. And each time the cars appeared closer to my routines outside my office, parked 2 rows from my apartment entrance, idling across from the gas station where I fueled up. The worst part wasn't just that it was happening. It was that no one else seemed to notice. When I showed a coworker one of the pictures, pointing out the strange repetition, she shrugged. Plates are recycled sometimes, right? Maybe it's just a DMV glitch. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted that explanation to be true. But deep down, I knew glitches don't follow you across town. Glitches don't park outside your window at 2 Amendo. That Friday night, I woke to the sound of tires crunching on gravel. I peered through the blinds. A dark car sat in the lot, engine humming. From my angle, I couldn't see the plate. But I already knew what it would say. I couldn't just keep watching. That night, something in me snapped. If I didn't confront this, it would keep spreading into every corner of my life, until I had nothing left but paranoia. So I grabbed my phone, pulled on a hoodie, and went downstairs. The lot was quiet except for the low rumble of that idling car. Its headlights were off, but the engine stayed running, patient, waiting. I walked toward it like I was sleepwalking. My chest hurt every step, tightening it further. When I reached the rear bumper, I forced myself to look down. The plate. The same plate. But this time I didn't just take a photo. I circled the car, peering inside through the tinted glass. The cabin was empty. No driver, no passenger. Just the engine running, the dashboard lights faintly glowing. That detail alone should have set me running, but instead I leaned closer. On the passenger seat was something, a thin folder. My name was written on the cover in block letters. I froze. My breath fogged the glass. Before I could think, the driver's side door clicked open. Not wide, just enough for the sound to carry. A soft, mechanical shift, like the car was acknowledging me. I stumbled back. The folder was still on the seat, my name staring at me. I wanted to grab it, to finally have proof this wasn't just madness. But the fear was heavier than my curiosity. My body refused to move closer again. I ran back upstairs instead, locked the door, and sat with my back against it until sunrise. By morning the car was gone. The only evidence was the line of tire marks pressed into the gravel, leading out of the lot. I scrolled through my phone, through the dozens of plate photos I'd collected. For the first time I noticed something I'd missed. In each picture, even though the vehicles were different, SUV, sedan, hatchback, pickup, one detail never changed. The parking sticker on the windshield? Same logo, same color, same placement. It wasn't about the plate at all, it was about the cars. Different shapes, different makes, but all marked. All part of something. And every one of them had been parked near me, watching, tracking. That evening, when I left work, I didn't head straight to my car. Instead, I took the long way around the lot, pretending to check my phone. There it was again. A different vehicle, a new face, same plate, same sticker, and this time parked right next to mine. I thought about going to the police. I even drove halfway there. But every red light, every turn, I saw another car with that same plate, that same sticker, following at a distance, never breaking the pattern. And I realized something awful. What could I even report? Officer, there are different cars with the same license plate. They'd laugh, or worse, they'd write me off as unstable, because without context, it sounds like paranoia. Without the folder, without proof, it's nothing but numbers and nerves. That night, I decided to take another look at my photos. I lined them all up on my laptop screen, one by one, vehicle by vehicle. When viewed together, a pattern emerged. Not just the plate, not just the sticker, but the positioning. Every car had been angled in a way that gave them a clear view of me. At the gas station pump, at the grocery store, at the stoplight, outside my building. They weren't random sightings. They were recordings of me from every direction possible. The last photo chilled me the most. It wasn't mine. I don't even remember taking it, but it was on my phone. A shot of me, walking out of my apartment, groceries in hand, unaware. In the corner of the frame, blurred but visible, was the edge of a windshield, with that same plate reflecting light. That's when it hit me. They didn't need to chase me anymore. They'd already closed the circle. Now, every time I step outside, I don't look at faces. I look at cars, parked across the street, lined up at intersections, idling at the curb. Different shapes, different makes, same plate, same sticker, always waiting,